I'm now joined from Nairn by Peter Bleksley. A former detective in the Metropolitan Police, Peter is now a private investigator, a TV presenter and also an author. Peter has been investigating the murder of Nairn banker Alistair Wilson for 17 years. Welcome, Peter.
Good afternoon.
Why was Alistair Wilson killed?
Well, I guess we'll only get the definitive answer to that question if somebody is arrested, charged and confesses all. There have, of course, been numerous theories put forward over the years. Much speculation about whether it was connected to his employment at the bank, which he was soon to leave. But in recent months, Police Scotland have made it very clear by saying, almost unequivocally, that they believe the motive for his murder surrounded a retrospective planning application that was made in relation to some decking laid outside the Havelock Hotel, the pub, bar and restaurant, which is directly opposite Alistair's home.
So someone strongly objected to his objections to that decking?
Well, Alistair wrote what I would describe as a fairly prickly letter to the planning department, and I've been in possession of this letter and all the paperwork around the planning application since 2009, when I paid a visit to the planning department of the Highland Council in Inverness, and they were very accommodating. They opened their files and they said I could have a photocopy of anything that I wanted, basically. So I invested the princely sum of £4.80 and walked out of there with a lot of photocopied documents, all relating to that planning application and some other matters. And Alistair's letter was sent not only to the planning department, but he sent copies to the licensing inspector of Nairn Police, an inspector called Blair Marquis, who I've written to. He declined to give me an interview, which of course is his right, and all other people as well. So Alistair was sort of spreading the word of his objections much further than just the planning department. And he complained on a number of levels about broken glass in the street, about people standing on the decking and staring directly into his front room, the increase in potential traffic as well, and essentially said that Crescent Road was a street with young families, young children, and he was pretty vociferous in voicing his objections to this retrospective planning application, because the decking had already gone down. And the landlord of the Havelock at the time, the owner, a man called Mr. Burnett, Andy Burnett, had to submit this retrospective planning application for the decking, which was eventually approved, I think in January of the following year.
So we're now, well, what some people say is a bizarre situation. There's a killer on the loose. Police, some people in Nairn apparently, and you seem to know who he is and where he is. When is someone going to do something, Peter?
Well, yeah, on the 30th of September this year, the BBC wrote an article where they said the police had a man in their sights. This wasn't new news to me, because I'd known since the summer of this year when I was up here on one of my numerous trips to Nairn. And this name was given to me by a number of sources that I regard as entirely reliable. These sources had been spoken to by the police, and the police had asked these sources what they knew about this man whose name was given to me. So I very much know who it is that the police have got in their sights. I have written to the police on more than one occasion, and I've said, is ... the name of the man, of interest to the team currently investigating the unsolved murder of Alistair Wilson, and they've just not dealt with that question. They haven't given me a yes, they haven't given me a no, they haven't given me a we cannot confirm nor deny. They have just flatly not addressed the question. So I've ploughed on ahead with my own research and investigations into this man. I've discovered a lot of things about him, and on this trip I've discovered his address, which is in a Scottish city. It's not Nairn. I've knocked on that door, there was no reply. I've spoken to neighbours who said they haven't seen him for a couple of weeks, and I've spoken to a family member who says he is a difficult person to get hold of. I've shoved one of my business cards under his door with a note on it saying we really need to talk, and I'm hoping that at some point we will get to have a chat. I've got the details and addresses of other family members, so I've still got plenty to do in terms of trying to get in front of this man and saying to him, please give me your version of events. Are you responsible for Alistair's murder or not?
I watch crime shows, and I see your own programmes regularly on what's it called, CBS reality TV and other channels, and we sometimes see that the police are criticised for not preserving crime scenes. Now, you have criticised, well, what was then known as Northern Constabulary, for not preserving the crime scene in this case. I mean, how could that happen? Is this not the most basic of procedures at murder scenes?
Oh, it should be. But unfortunately, the first officers on scene, from the witness accounts that I've heard, were really confronted with a situation that they certainly weren't familiar with, and they didn't have experience, and what would appear to me was that they didn't have the training in how to preserve a crime scene. Any detective, serving or retired, will tell you that the preservation of a crime scene is absolutely crucial. And at one point I'm told that the two officers were apart and both on their mobile phones simultaneously at the same time, when of course what they should have been doing was monitoring very closely who was allowed to come to the scene. Of course, people did rush to Alistair's aid to try and give him first aid, and that's understandable, of course. It's a natural human instinct to help someone. But there were a number of people that went up and down those steps to where Alistair had been shot on his front doorstep. And quite frankly, from what I'm told, it was a chaotic scene. It wasn't preserved as it should have been. And in fact, Mr. Burnett, who the landlord of the Havelock at the time, saw that Alistair was slipping off the stretcher at one point as he was being put into the ambulance. And Burnett tells me that he saw Alistair's watch was coming off. And Burnett fastened his watch back on to Alistair as he's on the stretcher. Now, you know, that's just a schoolboy error. You shouldn't be having members of the public touching, Alistair as he's fighting for his life, which of course we know he lost that battle tragically, because who knows what potential evidence could have been removed, destroyed, contaminated, not only at the scene, but of course on Alistair. You know, if he was shot at close range, there might have been gunshot residue on his wrist, on his arm, for example. If he'd grappled with the gunman, then of course there may be other forensic evidence, DNA, for example, let alone fibres, hair, saliva, blood even. Who knows? And so that was just a real example to me of how chaotic things were and how the scene and Alistair, because he forms part of the crime scene, he's the victim, it simply, unfortunately, wasn't preserved in the manner that it should have been.
To what extent do you think these police errors are responsible for how long it's taking to bring the murderer to justice?
We simply might never know. We can only speculate as to what may or may not have occurred. What we do know from Grampian police, who did a review into the investigation after some time, Grampian police said that it suffered from a lack of leadership in the early stages, which is a very damning indictment of any investigation, because leadership, of course, is absolutely key. So what did that lack of leadership, how did that impact upon the investigation? We simply don't know. I know that the search parameters certainly weren't wide enough, because the murder weapon was found 10 days later by a workman clearing out the drains up in Seabank Road. And if the search parameters had stretched as far inland as they did out to the beach, then Seabank Road would well have come within those parameters, and that weapon quite possibly would have been found much sooner. As it stood, it had 10 days of winter weather pouring over it in the bottom of that drain. And we know that despite it being apparently repeatedly submitted for forensic examination, no DNA or other forensic evidence was forthcoming from the weapon, unfortunately.
Is there any significance, Peter, in the fact that there have been suggestions that the murderer may have been an emergency worker?
I've not made any comment about that whatsoever. I know how that line has entered the media. I know what it is based upon, but I make absolutely no comment about that whatsoever at this moment in time. There may be a time when I want to speak further, but at the moment I'm making absolutely no reference and have nothing to say with regards to that particular line that's been released.
We know that you pursue a lot of cases, but you've been investigating the murder of Alistair for something like 17 years. No one's actually paying you. Why do you do it?
Because I am trying to achieve some form of justice for Veronica, for their two boys, for the wider family, and everybody who loved Alistair. I mean, I gave him my warrant card a long time ago when I left the police, and I don't have handcuffs, so I'm not about to arrest anybody. You know, I'm a self-employed, freelance writer, investigator, broadcaster, and I do what I do partly because really I like to get publicity for these cases because I happen to know that the police do respond to publicity. You know, they react to it because they feel they should do, and quite rightfully they should do. I know that my book prompted police action, which was published in 2018, To Catch a Killer. It's the only book written about the case, and I've given it a bit of an update for because it's going to be released as an audio book soon. So there's a little update in there, but I've probably got enough material to write another book on this case, but I'm not going to do that just at the moment. So yeah, it's for justice, I suppose. That's what it is, and to try and keep the profile of these cases high, to keep the police on their toes, perhaps. They won't like me saying that, but but essentially justice. It's what we all want. It's the cornerstone of our of the fabric of our society. Is that we need to think that we live in a world that's going to be just and where right prevails over wrong. And those kind of things. So, yeah, that's what it's all about.
In the light of what you've just said, to what extent are you hopeful of a breakthrough soon?
I know who the man is that they've got in their sights. I am not aware of all the information that the police have, of course. They're not going to make that public, and they're certainly not going to tell me what they've got. I can see why he's in their sights. And I shall just continue doing what I do. It won't be me that arrests him, but I will find him, and I will get in front of him, and I will ask him to tell me his version of events, whatsoever they may be. And as soon as I've got those, I will hopefully put them into the public domain, because the public want answers. There's still a very strong feeling in Nairn about this case. You know, I've been here for a few days, and every time I come up here, I'm always made aware of that strong feeling about the crime. It is still a blight on this beautiful Highland town, and the people here are absolutely amazing. I love this place. It will break my heart to leave again today, but that's why I would like the answers and some justice for everybody.
Peter Bleksley, thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome. Thank you.